Well, that didn't last long, ladies and gentlemen. Trump has already responded to the expropriation bill that was signed in South Africa. And of course, the left wing media over here is trying so hard to smear Trump. And the ANC is, of course, trying to downplay the whole thing. That's what we're going to talk about in this video, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into it.
Issues of vibrators.
To make sure that we leave no unturned and stone.
Did I hear that correctly? Hello, welcome to Newsflash. I'm your host, Emilio. Thanks for tuning in. Trump threatens South Africa on land expropriation, says he will cut funding. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, at the time of recording this, on the 3rd of February, South Africans woke up to the news that Trump is going to stop funding South Africa. As you can see here, he pledges to stop U.S. assistance to South Africa over the land law. And of course, some left-wing media houses like News 24 are trying to twist what Trump has said. Trump went on social media and put out this post. South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation at a minimum is happening for all to see. The United States won't stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. Sounds reasonable, right? And then there is a bit of a media briefing and a clip of Trump has been circulating on social media. Have a look.
So you said that you were going to cut aid from South Africa. Will you plan to cut aid across other African nations, and why South Africa?
No, it's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
And of course, left-wing media in South Africa is up to their normal PR attempts where they're trying to say or downplay or even try and skew what Trump has said. They're calling into question what does he mean by class of people. They're also trying to say that the confiscating of land isn't happening, while at the same time trying to smear Donald Trump by calling him right-wing, conservative, all the normal buzzwords. It's funny how they are so concerned with where this is coming from. Like, they're so upset that Trump is doing this, yet they don't want to blame the actual source, which is the ANC government. It's the ANC government who signed that expropriation bill, and the media just happens to defend it. So what did Trump mean when he said that certain classes of people in South Africa were being treated badly? Well, you don't have to look far to see the answer. First of all, there is a bit of a divide in South Africa. There's definitely people who have, and there's definitely people who don't have, and there's a very small middle class. But I don't think Trump is even talking about the rich people or middle class or even lower class or poverty class. I think he's talking about the elite class. They are the ones that are mistreating everybody else. Let's take the president Cyril Ramaphosa as an example, who according to Forbes is worth $450 million. Not rands, dollars. He is definitely in a separate kind of class in South Africa, along with all the other ministers and politicians in South Africa. And Cyril owns 31 properties, ladies and gentlemen. Who else in South Africa owns so many properties? Other than the corrupt and the elites and, all the ministers and politicians. And again, if this is what Cyril owns, imagine what the other politicians own as well. For 30 years, the ANC has been stealing from the South African people, and finally the chickens are coming home to roost. Not to mention the horrible policies like BEE and others that not only made the situation worse for South Africans, but only helped the elites. I mean, this is how Cyril made his billions, through BEE deals. It didn't benefit the everyday South African. It only benefited the cadres and their pockets. And there's other issues in South Africa, like the crime and justice system is severely failing. Civilians are not protected. They can't even trust their own police officers. Farmers are no longer protected and are dying in their thousands. Not just that, women and children are also dying at an alarming rate every year in South Africa. And yes, men are also dying. And I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg here when it comes to crime, and that's one of the issues. The other issue is load shedding. We had load shedding for years in South Africa, and it no doubt crippled our economy. Businesses were destroyed, and thus the unemployment rate skyrocketed. At one point, the unemployment rate in South Africa was the highest in the world. Furthermore, the continued destruction of infrastructure and service delivery just continued to make South Africans suffer. Now we even have a water crisis. And I haven't even touched on the mafia groups that are plaguing some of these South African industries, like the construction mafia or the water tank mafia. Not to mention, South Africa has, I wouldn't say cozied up with ISIS, but ISIS definitely operates in South Africa, and the South African government has done very little to prevent it. And when South Africa took Israel to court, or specifically to the International Court of Justice, I don't think that helped the situation either. So in South Africa, poverty has gotten worse in the past 30 years. The healthcare system is in its moor, and the unemployment rate is still one of the worst in the world. So why am I mentioning all this stuff? Because this is the stuff that Trump is talking about, the inhumane stuff, the human rights violation stuff. It is a human rights violation, the way the ANC has treated this country and its people. People are suffering in South Africa, dying in South Africa. That is what Trump is talking about. And it is the elite class that is responsible for all this destruction. Now, let's get on to the land invasion, because Trump said that land confiscation is happening, which it has been. It is no secret that many politicians have cried out that people should occupy land, and we've seen many examples of this over the years. Land invasions have been a problem in South Africa. There's just not a lot of reporting on it, but it does happen. And now that the expropriation bill has been signed, there have been cases, although not verified, of more land expropriation happening, where people are just basically setting up shacks on random pieces of land or land that's already owned. And the ANC was very quick to try and deny these. SA government rejects Donald Trump's confiscation of land accusation. Typical. And let's talk a bit about that whole land expropriation bill. You see, the left-wing media would have you believe that this expropriation bill is good because we're going to redress and give land back to the people. But there's already something in the Constitution known as restitution. And this is where, if you can prove that you were previously removed from a property that you owned in the apartheid era of South Africa, then you can state your case, state your claim, and if it's proven that you were wrongfully removed, then you will either be given land or money. This system already exists in South Africa, and almost 90% of claimants choose money instead of property. Roughly 80,000 land claims have been lodged, with most successful claimants declining the rights to property in favor of a payout. So you already have a system that gives back land or property to the person with the option of a monetary value. And that kind of makes sense, because who knows, maybe if you were removed from a piece of land during apartheid and then years later you try and come back and you want to get that land back, but maybe there's a mall that's built on that land. They can't give you a piece of that mall, so you're probably going to take the money, and then you can buy, using that money, you can buy land again. The point is, this system already exists, and the reason why it doesn't work well is because of the ANC. The ANC is incompetent, and certain things just don't go quick enough. And again, the true human rights violation here is taking away the right to own property or land. When you own land, it gives an individual a sense of independence. You have wealth. You have something that you can bargain on, that you can leverage. If you want to get a loan, if you want to invest, if you want to do all those things, you have a little cushion, something that gives you a bit of wealth and independence. And the moment the government takes that away, you no longer own anything. And it reminds me of that very upsetting quote, "You will own nothing and be happy." That is what communism is. That is what the ANC wants for the South African people. And that shouldn't be accepted. That is a human rights violation, because everybody should deserve to own and have the right to own their own property and land. When you take this away from individuals, you are making them weak, you are making them poor, and only the ones in charge, the elite, will benefit, because they're just going to be much richer. And now Cyril's panicking. Well, I don't know if he actually is panicking, but he wants to meet with Trump probably to try and explain this expropriation bill. And this kind of sounds like the same situation we had a few years ago when Trump put out a tweet saying that he was going to investigate the farm killings in South Africa because white farmers are being killed. And then on a very public stage, Cyril said there are no killings of farmers or white farmers in South Africa.
We were seated together at the lunch table, so we never really got time to talk about the tweet. It was just an opportunity to shake hands, to say how are you and all that. But on the tweet itself, he was clearly misinformed. And whoever gave him that information was completely wrong. There are no killings of farmers or white farmers in South Africa. There's no land grab in South Africa.
So this, again, sounds like Cyril just trying to lie and get Trump to look the other way and turn the other cheek, which I hope is not going to work.
As you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
And since making the announcement, the dollar has strengthened against the rand. It's almost 19 rand at the time of recording this. So I wanted to also find out, I wanted to get an opinion from someone who I know who watches American politics quite a lot. He knows a lot about American politics. Nicholas, who is part of the IRR and Daily Friend. I reached out to him to get his opinion on all this, and here's what he had to say.
Donald Trump's announcement that he's going to be cutting aid to South Africa over the expropriation bill is a very big blow to the ANC's narrative that it's been trying to push over the last couple of weeks. The ANC has essentially been going around claiming that this bill is no big deal and that it isn't going to have any negative consequences for investment or really for anything else. And this is simply a natural and just piece of legislation. Well, that appears to have blown up in its face, with first its partner in the GNU, the DA, getting very upset, and now, much more consequentially, the fact that the Trump administration seems to have turned its gaze on South Africa and is cutting aid. This is going to remove funding from the PEPFAR program, which provides HIV/AIDS treatment and medication for many very, very poor South Africans. And so South Africans will definitely suffer as a result of this. The ANC has responded pretty dismissively, which I think suggests that they're not really taking the seriousness of the situation properly. Trump has shown in the past couple of weeks that he is not afraid at all to use very serious measures to enforce his will on the global stage. And it's very important now that the government take this seriously, or else South Africa risks suffering even more from this legislation than it already has.
So right now it remains to be seen what exactly will happen for South Africa, but it definitely doesn't look good. And for those of you who think that South Africa is going to be just fine without the US, think again, because the United States obligated nearly $440 million in assistance to South Africa in 2023, the most recent US government data showed. Not to mention the trade deals and other agreements that South Africa and America have together that are supposed to help the economy in South Africa. But again, the reason why we don't see a lot of these benefits is because of the South African government and all the regulations that they put and all the red tape. And a lot of people will say, oh, we don't need the US, we have BRICS, we're going to be fine, BRICS is going to have a currency, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a problem with that too. Trump has already threatened tariffs if the BRICS nation tried to replace the dollar, which unfortunately, in an ironic way, would be very devastating again for the South African people, because it will be the taxpayers and the South African people that will ultimately pay for the tariff. And this article says that the tariffs could be as high as 100%. Which means, for example, and again, I'm just using this as an example, I'm not saying that this will happen necessarily with this industry, but for example, cars that are imported. We already have huge taxes on cars. That's why they're so expensive in South Africa. Now imagine they doubled in price. That's ultimately what would happen, but with other kinds of goods. And those goods would depend on what Trump decides to tariff. And for those of you that think that a BRICS currency is happening anytime soon, well, South Africa says no plans to develop a common BRICS currency. And that was in response to when Trump said that he would enforce tariffs on the BRICS nations if they had a different currency. So as much as South Africans think that South Africa will be fine without the US, you'd be very wrong. And there's a lot of American companies in South Africa that would probably withdraw the moment shit hits the fan. But this is all speculation. Who knows exactly what Trump is going to enforce? Who knows what the consequences will be? All we do know is that at the moment, like Nicholas said, Trump is being very adamant in the way that he's running things. He's not joking around. He's not messing around. He means what he says. So the South African government should be taking this very seriously. And right now, the ANC aren't the only one in charge. There is a government of national unity, and they haven't really said much, at least at the time of this recording. So only time will tell what the government of national unity will decide to do. I mean, maybe the other 9 parties in the GNU will gang up against the ANC and roll back on the expropriation bill. That is a possibility. Or maybe 8 of the 9 other parties will be with the ANC, and the DA will be pressured to either leave the GNU or fight by themselves against the expropriation bill. There are so many ways that this could go, and only time will tell what exactly is going to happen. There is no doubt that the spotlight is currently on South Africa. The ball is basically in the ANC's court. The question right now is, will they yield or will they double down? And I think we're going to get an answer to this question because while we were busy putting this video together, some breaking news came out, and it seems that the ANC has found an scapegoat some way, somehow. I don't even know. It's a very weak attempt at an scapegoat, if you can even call it that. But this is now what the ANC is saying. Just in, the ANC has blamed lobby group AfriForum for fueling a racist misrepresentation of the country's land reform programs. The ANC said AfriForum's sentiments have now been amplified by USA President Donald Trump. And here's the statement. They made a whole thing. It was basically just saying that, AfriForum's racist, don't believe AfriForum. AfriForum's trying to destabilize, blah, 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 which is all BS. And what was interesting is in the last paragraph, it says, however, the ANC will not tolerate racist distortions aimed at undermining our national sovereignty transformation agenda. Yeah, transformation agenda. In other words, communism. That's all you're trying to transform this country into is communism. So it seems like the ANC will try and double down in this. It's really concerning to see. It's really sad to see. And to try and pin this like it's AfriForum's fault is also just ridiculous. Conscious Caracal, or Ernst van Sale, who works for AfriForum, tweeted this: ANC, total panic stations, good. And I couldn't agree with him more. But again, only time will tell what South Africa's fate is, and once again, the ball really is in the ANC's court. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comment section below, ladies and gentlemen, and while you're there, leave a like on this video, share it far and wide, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I've got more content coming your way, and with all that being said, thanks for watching. Your newsflash is in.
Want to play a game? Truth or dare? Here, pack it up.
Take your laptops and electronics.
Get the basil. Get the basil. Why is it empty? How am I supposed to see? Thanks. I dare you to turn on the light. Gotcha! Then who's out there? I found the basil.